Welcome to Longevity Industries' presentation of the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. I'm your host, Dean Phillips, and I'm so glad to be here today with you because I have my first ever repeat guest, and he comes to us from Balluff. He is the marketing director over there, and it is Will Healy. Welcome, Will.
Dean, glad to be here again. It's always fun to talk with you.
Yeah, it is great to have you. You have such great insight, and also you bring with you such a great, vast amount of experience of hands-on being out there with customers to dictate what their needs are. That really helps a lot.
Yeah, thanks. I like to talk to people about manufacturing. I'm passionate about it, and it's just a great industry. And so, people are working through challenges, and there's some great ideas of how to overcome them. So I'm happy to share those with you. Great.
Now, you were on at episode 115 on our show back in May of 2018. So
Man,
now
that seems like eternity ago.
It does, and how fast technology has changed. So tell me, what is your big key takeaway in what you think is going to happen in the next 5 years as far as manufacturing goes? What are some of the most impactful changes?
Oh man, Dean. I wish I could tell you who coined the phrase, but I love it. The most impactful thing I see coming is the Silver Tsunami. We have this huge number of people retiring. I love the term Silver Tsunami because of the alliteration. I've always geek out with alliteration. So the Silver Tsunami, everyone's retiring and the information is leaving our organization. So I think the biggest changes I see are, you used to have a guy on a machine. He could listen to the machine or hear a noise and he could know what's wrong and fix it. And with that guy retiring, new people coming in, they aren't going to have that kind of machine connection. And so the technology we use is going to have to change. The way we train those people is going to have to change. The way they want to work is going to change. And so I just see a huge, I guess I would call it a cultural revolution inside our factories and inside our production facilities.
Yeah, it is a world of difference. People don't realize that so many of our workers are retiring, and the amount of experience that they've accumulated over the years, that didn't come overnight. And you have to, I often have to remind people that you have to take the perspective of what that person was 40 years ago, 50 years ago when they started. And we look at somebody today and they're like, well, they're not at that level. Well, neither were they when they started. And you kind of have to have that perspective in your mind because that is a difficult thing for some people to realize.
I met a guy at FabTech a couple years ago who was 100 years old still walking around the show. I mean, that guy was working with belt drive machines, right? I mean, there has been a lot of change in technology over the last 100 years. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Absolutely, it is. Tell everybody about your background and how you got into manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a mechanical engineering degree from Purdue University. I graduated 15 years ago next year, and I came into manufacturing on the sales side. Balluff, working for Balluff, we do automation, so we're the nervous system of the machine, sensors and networks and those kinds of things. But I just got so excited going around and helping customers, seeing how they were using automation. I mean, I've seen how a tree turned into a 2x4. I've seen how a car is put together and assembled. I've seen how they sort apples. Absolutely incredible things that we do in manufacturing, and especially with automation technology. So I've done product management for products and strategy for how do we go after markets. And most recently, I've been working a lot in workforce development. So currently, I'm on the board of a Cincinnati local association called the Advanced Manufacturing Industry Partnership. We're working to try to fill the skills gap and overcome that Silver Tsunami here in the Cincinnati region, northern Kentucky and southeastern Indiana. So the AMIP and the organizations that I'm working with locally, we're all trying to figure out how do we overcome the skills gap problem that we're already seeing today. So
yeah, and it is a challenge. I brought
a huge challenge.
Yeah, and I brought up to several people that had the solution, well, we need to retrain. And that is fine for a 4 or 5 year solution to the problem, but what are people doing today? So what is the solution that people are using?
Yeah, I think retraining is one of the topics. We have a much bigger topic. I'm on a number of roundtables in the Northern Kentucky area and the Cincinnati area. And the roundtables, time and time again, it's not necessarily about lots and lots of skills. It's about a basic functional skill. Can the person show up to work every day?
Yeah.
Can the person pass a drug test? I mean, these are some of the base skills that are necessary that we have to overcome and make sure are happening in our communities. And so it requires an investment from the manufacturers and the companies in the local areas to invest in the schools and the communities and to connect with the community to actually have an investment in their workforce. And workforce starts very young, 6th grade, 5th grade.
Yeah. They've made their decision at that point of where they're going to go to high school, and which by extension becomes their career path.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. They've decided by 7th grade whether they're going to go into STEM, and they'll decide by 9th grade if they're going to go into manufacturing.
Right. Yeah. And I think people misunderstand that. And I think most of the organizations have realized that, though. They do understand that, hey, we need to connect with people at a younger age. We need to start with that passion. And I think you hit it on the head with STEM. That is where we need to drive people's interest. We need to have people understand that this is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is fun and interesting, and the technology we get to use is cutting edge stuff in manufacturing. Really, really interesting, and again, I think it's fun and it creates a happy work because what you're doing, I mean, you're making stuff. You feel good when you make stuff, right? I mean, you go to IKEA and you build a cabinet over the weekend, you're like, I made that.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
You feel good when you make stuff. So I think manufacturing can be a feel-good experience for people. And I think once they see manufacturing the way it is today, they do much better. I always talk about, Dean, most students, they have an exposure to manufacturing in 2 pictures in their textbooks. Okay? Are you ready for the 2 pictures in the textbook? The first one we've all seen is a picture of Henry Ford's production plant in 1911. Okay? The guys, it's black and white. It looks dark and dingy. There's a bunch of people standing by the cars and, not looking very happy. That's the first picture that you see because, they talk about the Industrial Revolution in the textbooks. The next picture they see is from World War II, and it's usually from a Northwest Indiana steel mill with a guy black and dirty and coated, working on steel for munitions or a bomber or something. Those are the only 2 pictures that we see in manufacturing, in school and in textbooks. So if those are the only 2 things that I know manufacturing is, I'm not going to want to go into that.
Right. And I think tools like 3D printing and getting to see robotics, these tools gain interest. I did the same thing. I was speaking to a group of teachers, and I showed them, I brought out a couple of the Sphero robots and things like a drone, and I brought out a 3D printer, and I showed them that because I said, this is how you're going to capture their interest in STEM. Because you can talk about all the other things, but this is where they're going to say, wow, I want to be involved in that. That's pretty cool.
I want to do robots.
Yeah.
We desperately need people saying that in Kentucky.
Yeah.
So how can we get more people saying that?
Yeah, I agree. And now, as far as technology goes, have you seen where more and more people are having to solve their problems through technology now because of the lack of workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really amazing statistic, and I think it came out of the 2018 NAM Skills Gap report, but it talked about 64% of executives found that automation helped them overcome these skills gap challenges. So I think we have a little bit of issue the way that we're talking about automation And I always get angry on Twitter and tweet at news agencies that report about automation negatively because, we're not investing in automation to get rid of jobs. We're investing in automation because there aren't people to fill the jobs. That's what we're finding out from the data. It's not that we don't want people. Like, our response is we want to hire someone. There aren't people to hire. So we have to invest in technology and automation. I mean, U.S. News and World Report in January of this year, 2019, said, 25% of U.S. jobs are at risk of automation.
Yeah.
No, they can't fill the job. That's the problem. We can't find people with the right skills. So we have to automate things to do that. So, I mean, we can invest in retraining workers, but if there isn't a worker to sit in the seat, it doesn't particularly really matter.
Right. Well, and even if you look at any of the news agencies or even listen to advertising on the radio, you hear people like the unions, the electrical unions, and the any of the craft unions. They're all needing people. They can't get people to come into the programs. So that means that they don't have the labor force to fill their jobs.
Right.
So it's apparent that we don't have that. And if you listen to the unemployment numbers, they're so low that it is hard to find people that just show up. Can you show up for work, and can you pass a minimal drug test? If you can do those two things, you can have a career for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. A well-paying career, actually.
Yeah. And that's the hard part I think people have that get discouraged about things because they can't find what they want because their degree is in something that has no value. And they're like, well, I don't want to go into manufacturing. I have a degree in French poetry.
Right.
Okay, that's great, but can you still show up at work? Well, I probably won't because this isn't the job I want, and that's not the career I chose. Okay.
It gets really challenging. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's why we're investing in so much technology is to try to, I've read some amazing articles. I recommend anyone who wants to lose 3 hours one day, just Google gamification of work or gamification of manufacturing. There are some amazing, really interesting articles about the idea of, we're also trained to play games. I mean, how many games are on your cell phone right now, right? I mean, there's tons of games on your phone. All of us are we're trained now to want awards and badges and recognition for a small accomplishment because we're doing it all the time playing these little games on our phones. Whether you're playing Solitaire, you're playing Angry Birds, you're playing Fortnite, there are lots of awards always given to kind of want you to do that. And so taking that idea of games and applying it to work has high value. There's some really interesting articles out there on gamification of work, and technology is really allowing some of that to happen. So some really cool technologies out there.
Yeah, and I think if you look at how manufacturing floors have changed, they're more visual. They have more feedback through and-on lights and other things like that. It is very much like a game in that we want to encourage people through rewards, through instantaneous feedback of the status of where you are. Are you ahead of the curve? Are you producing more than you're supposed to? If you're falling behind, what can we do to help improve you? It's amazing how that has basically kind of ingrained itself into our manufacturing culture because it is something that everybody does. And I said this a long time ago is if you want to encourage people in manufacturing, make it a game. Like you used to have Roller Coaster Tycoon was building a roller coaster in a theme park. Same thing should be the way we do it with a manufacturing floor. And if you don't do something right, well, then you don't get your product out or you don't do these things. Kind of like, what was the game? Burger Time or something like that?
Where you're like a chef doing like cooking stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly it. So, there's an awesome article from a guy, his name's John Hitch from Industry Week, and he wrote it last year. I think it's like June or something of last year. And he wrote an article about how on the production floor, they started a board, like a leaderboard in their break room. And at first, the workers were kind of annoyed by it, but then they tied whoever's on the top of the leaderboard got an extra vacation day. Man, like it motivated the employees. You saw who your top performers were. Your supervisors could see who was struggling and work directly with who was struggling and decide, could we get them caught up, or do we need to let them go and find someone else who could get the job done? Is there something wrong with their work cell or their equipment? It gave you a lot of information by just having a leaderboard in the break room, and it actually created a positive environment. Most people, I think, gasp when they hear something like, "Let's rank everybody."
Right. Yeah.
At first you absolutely, but our young workforce has always been raised that way.
Yeah.
Always. They know their class rank in high school. They know I'm 97 or I'm 126 or I'm 375. They know where they are. And they've always been taught through games and rewards-based systems. So we shouldn't be shy about putting that into our organizations if it will directly apply and has real value. You have to tie it to actual value in the organization, of course. But, a leaderboard can be a cool tool to gamify manufacturing.
Yeah.
Really neat article in Industry Week from last year.
I'll have to check that out.
Yep. Yeah, I really like it.
Speaking of that, I think people see it and they're like, well, I can't be like number one, so they get discouraged. And I think that there's solutions to that problem in the same way as you used to have things like sports like bowling. Okay, you weren't bowling against the pro bowler and not getting any enjoyment. You get a handicap and things like that.
Right.
And you're also bowling against people. They would automatically pair you after so much time to be competing at somebody at your level.
Right.
And you can't compare somebody who's running an automatic press line and somebody who's running a manual press line.
Right.
But you can compare apples to apples to get still some improvement. And sometimes that's the key, is you're not measuring their production, you're measuring their improvement.
Right.
And that's the key, is are you getting people to improve? Are they getting better at their jobs? Are they seeing where they can help improve and what things they're doing that may save time? And is that being also transferred throughout the company? I think that's an important aspect too, is taking the ideas from the workers to find solutions that work for everybody, and then taking that and, being able to produce better, faster, and do all of those things through gamification.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, talking about this, like, are they hitting their numbers, and are they being, young people, this is kind of a weird segue, but young people want to be able to have their mobile device with them. I mean, Gen Z, the youngest and newest workers entering, the ones that are 18, 19-year-olds entering our workforce, their phone is an extension of who they are. Like, so our policies to have it like locked in a cabinet somewhere, they want to have it with them. And they want it is part of who they are. It's like asking someone to lock their hand. And the reason I bring this up is with visualization and leaderboards, if someone we know are making their quota, or they've worked ahead of the time, or, they need to make 300 parts a day and they're already at 200 parts by lunchtime. If the kid's standing there looking at his phone for 5 minutes, is that the worst thing ever? Because he'll probably be more engaged with his work if he's, we have to kind of rethink our policies with technology and think about what are our real goals. Our true goals are, we're trying to make so many parts a day. Right. So as long as we have data that shows that kid's going to hit his numbers, and that's our expectation. Like, if he looks at his phone for 5 minutes, is that the end of the world? Because our culture is different. I'm sure some people will be upset hearing me say that, but they have a different expectation of how they're going to work, and telling them they're going to lock their phone half a mile away from where they are, they're not going to want to work at your company.
Right. And because in their eyes, they're looking at working at Google, or they're thinking of working at
Mm-hmm.
some robotics company. And if you tell them that they can't do these things, they're probably, you're going to lower their interest in staying at that position.
Mm-hmm.
But if you
Yeah.
encourage it through, let's say, you get a text on your phone that you just hit 1 million parts, and everybody else
Right.
sees that too, and they all
Right.
get texts. So now you develop a company app that
Mm-hmm.
reports this stuff, and that
Well, and it's funny you say that, because millennials and Gen Zs, they want to be very much recognized in the moment for accomplishments that they've had. It goes back to that, they've always been recognized for that. So if you can use an internal social media or even LinkedIn or something like that to recognize them for even small work accomplishments, the baby boomers would say, well, that's the job.
right,
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but it's just the way we've raised them. They need that constant kind of feedback. So it's not unreasonable to say, hey, let's reward them for things that they've done that are above and beyond. Yeah, 1 million parts. That's amazing. Unless, they're supposed to be making 1 million parts of shift. I guess it depends.
right.
It depends what the part is, I guess. But yes, no, totally. I think you find things that are exceptional, and you recognize exceptionalism in the moment.
Right. And I think you set up metrics that meet what your expectations are and what match their expectations.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do both. You have to say, I want you to be able to produce parts, but you have to have some job satisfaction, because if you don't, you're never going to have a quality workforce, because they're going to dread coming to work.
Right. Or they just won't work for you.
Yeah.
There will be 2.4 unfilled manufacturing jobs by 2028. That's not that far away.
Right.
So if we want to have people who like working where we are, we really have to, this is an industrial revolution, and we have to have a cultural revolution inside our organizations to rethink how we're engaging employees and what are actually our goals. Do our policies actually support us attaining our goals with this new workforce?
Right.
And how do we change our policies, and how do we adapt our culture to be able to adapt to this new workforce and the new expectations of technology? Like mobile devices, the things, so many companies have no mobile devices on the plant floor. And I get it. Distracted walking is dangerous. Fork trucks driving, someone's looking at their cell phone instead of paying attention. I'm sure these accidents happen regularly. But if you have the policies, not no mobile devices, but you have policies where by the machine or the equipment, we can have a tablet out. There's some amazing things we can do with augmented reality or mobile devices that can help us better service the machines, the information in the machines. We can better visualize what's going on. The maintenance person who's never worked on the machine can get step-by-step instructions. There's some really amazing things we can do with mobile devices if we look at our policies and really write them in a way that support our goals, and allow for a little more flexibility.
Right. Do you see more, or is Balluff and other companies, do you see where they are incorporating tools into their systems that are designed for augmented or virtual reality? What I mean by that is, I know that some of the equipment manufacturers are pre-designing in RFID tags or key indicator points, so that if you were to hold up a phone, it would identify as that item, so that when a maintenance person holds it up, they can point to each valve, they can point to each indicator or adjustment that goes on, so that in the future, as they develop these apps, there's already predetermined indicators that can be fed back into the system and then indicated, so that a worker on the other side, or even not a worker, can say it's the second valve from the left. And the left meaning because there's an orientation part of the RFID and an orientation built into it. Do you see more of that?
With our technology in particular, we're finding a lot of people are investing in things like smart sensors and
Mhm.
for sure. RFID is growing like crazy right now, just so they can get more data out of the equipment. So the answer to your question is yes, sort of. I see a lot of the infrastructure being put in place so that in the next couple of years we can implement those kinds of technologies. But right now, you have a lot of, I always ask the question when I'm presenting, who has a machine on your floor from before World War II? And more than half the people raise their hand, and guaranteed that machine has 2 buttons on it, stop and go. Right?
Yep.
So, first thing we need to do is we need to get more sensors on that machine, more information out of that machine, so that we can, if you walked up to that machine with a tablet, it ain't going to tell you anything.
Right.
So you see the investment in a number of Control Engineering has a really great study from, I think, 2017 that shows that the number one thing people are investing in right now is sensors. And big data, and that's not getting as much money, but it's growing. And so the investment in sensors is laying the foundation, I think, for a couple of years from now. You and I can have our third time on the podcast in a couple of years.
There
And I
you
can
go.
tell you about all the amazing things I've seen. But I think what they're doing is laying that foundation. However, there are some cool studies, like the Smart Industries, a magazine. They do a 2019 State of the Initiative report they do it every year, and they compare previous years. And they asked who's adopted technology. And what's amazing to me, Dean, is 25% of the people surveyed have an AR application in production. 25% have an AR application in production. And 52% have either in production or in test. So if you do the math, that's 27% are testing AR and 25% are in production. So more than half see AR as a viable technology in their facility. So that is really surprising to me. But that's not the biggest option. I mean, virtual reality has 65%. Mobile devices like 84%. So people are either in production or in test with this technology. This isn't just us talking pie in the sky, oh, isn't augmented reality cool? No, there are live applications for this, and people are using it in production. And they're using it for applications like assembly. What if you could have an operator, never train them, put on glasses, and the glasses talk them through how to do the job, training in the moment? That's incredible. That reduces our overhead and our training costs. The onboarding time of new employees is always a challenge for us, especially if rotating employees all the time. If we can just have them put on the glasses, do what the glasses say, that's incredible.
Well, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
Look, I just think you can use it for assembly. You can use augmented reality for maintenance support. I saw an awesome application from Trump where they can have a tech can put on the glasses in your production facility. They have a tech connect to the glasses from their tech center, and the tech can see what you see and walk you through a repair on the machine without someone having to make an actual site visit.
Right. Yeah, I was over at that Trump booth and saw that. It was pretty amazing what they can do. I think Cincinnati was doing something very similar too, and I was really blown away by how people are using it. And I think it goes back to what you said earlier: is if you don't have somebody trained, what is your solution? At least in the short term, something like this can work great. Because they don't have to know anything. They just have to be the person there to do it. Do you?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you see that becoming more incorporated across the board in manufacturing?
I do, because augmented reality has so many applications. You could have a supervisor, like a line supervisor, standing on the line, looking down the whole production area and understanding each of their work cells, who's ahead, who's behind, who's the bottleneck. That could get tied into the plant Wi-Fi and connected to a big data system that could help them, predict where a bottleneck's going to occur, or an operator who's a little bit behind, or, feed them information before it becomes a major problem. Predictive management almost is the idea, right?
Absolutely.
A coined trademark Will Healy 2019. But anyway, no, really, we talked about predictive maintenance a ton in the past and in a lot of applications. Of course, that it has huge ramifications to be able to have a maintenance person use augmented reality to understand what's going on in the machine. I started off this podcast talking about the guy who could listen to a machine and know what was wrong. You're going to have that with the young guy. The young guy's just going to be wearing augmented reality glasses. He's going to look at the machine, and the machine's going to tell him what's wrong.
Right.
So, so your guy who could just hear the machine, he had augmented reality. He just had augmented reality ears. Your new guy's going to have augmented reality eyes.
Yeah.
So I think really that's the kind of things that are working for us.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And I think you to that point, what you see, and most people don't realize, is that if you look at your computer, it is a factor of that, because the day was when you had to know how to code in order to use a computer.
A great example, Dean.
And now everything is very simple interfaces. It's all graphical user interface, and for that reason, we see more of that. And that's going to continue on our equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's a great time to be involved in manufacturing for that reason alone, is that I'm pretty excited to see where we could take some of this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Even other technologies like exoskeletons, there's been a lot of really interesting articles in magazines about people using exoskeletons, to do assisted lift or improve the ergonomics of a process or an operation. I've seen some cool applications with drones. I thought, drones in manufacturing, that just sounds like somebody playing. But no, I saw an awesome presentation from a gentleman at Ford where he talked about how they're using it to do machine inspections. If you have a stamping press 3 stories tall, someone has to climb up into the crown and look around, determine the problem, figure it out, then climb back down, get the parts, make a plan, climb back up there. What if you could just fly a drone up there, get it all imaged, make an assessment of what needs to happen, and then climb up into the crown once? That's way better. That's way safer. I mean, it's such a better way to do our business and to be more effective at what we do. It blew me away seeing that you could use a drone. It's so obvious, but really a powerful way to use new technology to be more effective at our job.
Right. And not to mention that how much safer it is to not have to have somebody, because you think about how much training you have to go through when you have to climb on top of a machine or use a man lift. There's a lot of requirements to safeguard that person going up on top of that machine, or in confined spaces, which is another one.
Absolutely. Yep. Confined spaces in drones, I think that is huge value.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sir, I hate to announce it, but we are out of time and we have to get going again. But I'm sure I will definitely have you back on here in a very short period. Hopefully it won't be as long as it was last time, Will.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir. This has been Longevity Industries' presentation of the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. I'd like to thank the Precision Metal Forming Association and the PMA's Educational Foundation for helping with this show. Everybody go out there and make it a great day.